2023 will go down in history as one of the biggest years for new TCG releases in the hobby space, probably ever. Just looking at new releases alone, we've got Lorcana, Shadowverse Evolve, we've got Grand Archive, and in the case of today's video, we have Alpha Clash. And as these games move out of their initial hype phase and out of the first set into their second and third sets, we're going to see how these games plan to attack the market and then plan to maintain, build, and grow their player base. So today we're going to talk about Alpha Clash and how they plan on doing that as their next set, Clash Grounds, is due to release very soon. Not only that, I do have a spoiler for you in the Alpha Clash Clash Grounds set, and it is a doozy, so hold on to your hats later in the video for that one. So let's start by setting the stage. Alpha Clash is a superhero-themed trading card game that has established itself as not only a superhero trading card game, but a trading card gamer's paradise, if you will. It's got a lot of the similar or same mechanics from a variety of other trading card games, and it has sort of brought them together, coalesced them into something that, in my opinion, and what I've described in the past videos that I've released on Alpha Clash, as something that is the sum is greater than the parts. So we have, a resource system similar to something like Magic the Gathering, or in this case, Lorcana now recently come out as well. Or even going back to like Duel Masters and Kaijudo, wherein you can turn a card into your hand into a land. So we have a land-based resource system. We have a permanent-based sort of attack and defense phase as well, where you can go into sort of a fighting phase and you trade with your opponent's creatures in that respect. There are some interesting sort of caveats to all of these things as I explain them, of course, but Alpha Clash has sort of established that it takes these well-known mechanics and well-known tropes and improves upon them in slight different variations and ways. And when you take that and you combine all of those disparate parts into something cohesive, and then you put together a very punchy and very catchy theming, in this case, and very novel theming of superheroes, which we don't have a ton of, well, you're left with a game that, in a lot of respects, reminds you of other games, but a little bit slimmer and streamer and more optimized, and also feels unique in and of itself because, like I said, you don't necessarily always sit down and play a superhero-themed trading card games, and those cards melded with the aesthetic alongside of all of it create something that, like I've said, is greater than the sum of its parts. I've mentioned it before, I do find the game very fun. I found the game very back and forth. It doesn't feel super swingy one way or another. It feels very familiar. If you've played things like Magic the Gathering, if you've played things like, in some cases, Yu-Gi-Oh! And not quite Pokemon, but you could maybe feel some through lines there as well, with some more sort of stadium type things being implemented as far as mechanics are concerned. If you've played some of those games, you're going to go, oh yeah, I totally understand that. And then you just run with it with the cards that have been created specifically for it. And there's a lot of great things to be had within the game. That being said, there are also some criticisms that I have personally seen been placed in the comments section of my previous videos for the game that I feel like in this second set, Alpha Clash has done a good job of addressing. So first thing I've seen a lot, and this is weird, it always kind of starts with the aesthetic, and weirdly enough, I've talked about this before, but with trading card games, I think your aesthetic is one of the most important things that you have going for you. If you don't have a distinctive or a very catchy aesthetic or just visual art style, something that really draws people in and makes them want to see the cards, collect the cards, hold the cards, play the cards, then you're not motivating people to do so going forward, right? And so there have been people that in previous videos have mentioned that they didn't really like the art style, that it felt a little bit more generic to them, that it felt a little bland, and I personally don't agree with that. I actually very much like the art style of the first set, as you see right here scrolling through as I'm opening this box. This is, by the way, the last box I have of this product of the very first set, and I figured I'd open it while I talked. Nevertheless, I actually very much enjoy that art style, but they have put together a very interesting, very distinctive, very visually appealing art style for this second set that, if you look at it, you know what it's trying to be. This is a superhero themed trading card game through and through. And I'll show you a couple of examples right now. Those are straight up superhero themed comic book-esque art pieces that have now been placed on the cards. And it's interesting to look at this because when I first saw this, I was actually a little put off by it. When I was sent over a couple of the cards that I'm going to spoil on this video, I was actually put off by it because I thought to myself, wow, that art style that I actually really enjoyed is sort of, kind of over there now, and now we have this new art style. But the more I looked at these cards and the more I saw some of the other cards that people are starting to spoil, the more I realized this is so smart. This is a really, really smart play. If you are trying to create a very distinctive aesthetic that people can go, oh, I know what this is trying to be. I know what this is supposed to be. I know what I'm playing as I actually play the game, then people are more apt to latch onto it and run with it. And the more I saw these cards and the more I looked at them, the more I realized I do like this art style as well. And I am very curious to hear your own thoughts, whether or not you play this TCG. I want you to just compare if the goal, and this is the fun part about this channel because we're talking about trading card games in all forms and facets, if the goal is to get people to play your superhero trading card game, which aesthetic do you think achieves that goal better? Let me know in a comment below. I really want to hear from you. I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are for changing this aesthetic. I'm very curious to know. But that's not the only thing that they have done. They've also included a couple of new mechanics, some new zones within the game that you can play into. I'm not sure that I'm able to talk too much about them, but they are making additions to the gameplay, to the mechanics, and to the overall feel of the game. Because another issue that I think people have posted or left comments for is that they feel as though they've played a similar version of this game. And again, to me, this goes back to, well, yes, it is okay to take mechanics that you recognize and then to combine them in the way that you most enjoy. Now, you personally may not want like this mechanic and this mechanic to go together, but I really like the idea of all of these mechanics stringing together to make something that is sort of slightly different, or in a lot of cases when you're playing through the game, a lot different, and makes you think about the game a lot differently, but familiar enough for you to be able to explain to new players and to pick up and play. That being said, I do think that they're doing a very smart play and very smart thing by making tweaks and making sort of additions to the mechanics as you go. And of course, as you play, and make your own trading card game, you're going to notice that, this exact same sort of sequence happens. The more sets you make, the more things you release, the more mechanics get added, the more keywords, come into play and things like that. But I think they're doing this on an even more fundamental level with this set, Clash Grounds. And that leads me to my spoilers for today, and I am very happy to share with you a brand new character to the game. This is a new contender. This is Death, Chaos Bringer, with 30 health and 2 effects, of course, as when you start the game, you start with the effect that says when a Death Clash card you control is defeated or sent to oblivion, you may engage this card. So in other words, when a Death character on your board you control is defeated, so destroyed or sent to the graveyard, then you can tap this, or you can turn this to the side, you can exhaust it, whatever you want to say. If you do that, if you turn this to the side and engage this card, you get to draw a card, and then up to 1 target character, in this case Clash card, which is the term they use, you control gets +1/+1. So you give a +1/+1 buff. In other words, if you trade one of your guys in, that's a Death Clash card. If you trade one of yours in, you can tap your hero, and when you do, you draw a card, which is quite good, and then you give a buff to something else, allowing you to trade even more. So basically, you have the incentive to use your Clash cards, your sort of fighting characters on the field, in trade scenarios. If one of them dies, you get card advantage in a way, when you think about it that way, almost like you're recycling one of your characters on the field into a card into your hand. It replaces itself, and you're giving a buff to make advantageous trades as well. And then when you're at 10 or less health, you get another effect that says once per turn during your primary phase, you may put target black Clash card with an initial resource cost of 2 or less. So you just go get something from your oblivion of 2 or less, and you just put it into play. and at the end of your turn, you banish that card. So at 10 health or less, you're able to just bring things back to life and then lose it at the end of the turn, but you still get to use it before you lose it. That is incredibly potent and incredibly powerful. And you combine this with a card like Restoration, which has some really cool art. Costs 1. This is what we call a clash buff, and a clash buff is essentially a reaction during a fight. Think of it like instant speed in Magic or an attack reaction in Flesh and Blood. And it says you may play this card only if your contender is black, and of course a black hero being the color it represents. Target contender or clash card you control gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn. Makes sense. It's a very simple buff. You pay 1 for a 1/1 buff, but then you may put a clash card with an initial resource cost of 1 or less from any Oblivion into your clash zone, engaged, and you don't lose it at the end of the turn. You just get a 0 or a 1 cost card just back, and you get to put it in, and you turn it to the side, and you have it there. So you are not only able to give a +1 buff on your cards when you play this, you also get a card back in return if you're playing like a 1 cost clash card that's already been destroyed. This card's insane. This feels really nuts. So as for this second set, Clash Grounds, they are really trying to push the envelope and trying to really establish this within the community of TCGs. And that is a tough thing to do, especially like I mentioned, in a day and age where there are trading card games popping up left and right. But with this set, I think it's like an insane amount of new characters that are coming into being played, like 7 new contenders. It's trying to position itself and Alpha Clash into the sort of trading card market, firmly planted on that superhero sort of niche that isn't really addressed. And I think that is a very big benefit for it. And we will see how it performs going into next year, as this set is going to release, I think, on November the 10th. So let me know what you think about these cards and what you think about Alpha Clash going forward. I am very curious to hear your opinions on it. I know we talked at length about it in the live stream I did a few weeks back, ranking all the different TCGs from this year. If you want to go check that out and see what we had to say, well, click this link up there. If you enjoy the video, make the number go slightly higher, because numbers above my head going up makes me happy. As always, thanks for watching.